Oakland, California has way more good in it than bad. But if there's one thing the city has to fix, it's the police department. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Cue the intro. Welcome to the Thriving in the San Francisco Bay Area channel. I'm Rich Fleming, your local realtor, and I'm here to teach you what it's like to live in all parts of the Bay Area. So if you've got questions, you know what to do, drop me a text, give me a call, send me an email, because I'm here to help you relocate to the Bay Area. And let's just jump straight into it. In today's video, we're going to talk about some of the challenges the Oakland Police Department has and why Oakland isn't going to be able to solve its crime problem until the challenges with the police are really addressed. Now, let me just start that this video is not going to be a bash the police video, but there are some definite challenges the department has and the city has to address. So let's just jump straight into it. So in this video, we're going to cover a couple of things. One, Oakland's current crime challenge and where it's located in the city, because that is a very important part of the story of the police department and crime in Oakland. The history of Oakland, in other words, how did we get to this situation? The rise of community resistance, or essentially the distrust of the police in many parts of Oakland. Some police department scandals really focusing on about the last 20 years because that's really impacted where the police department is now and what's going on in the city. Challenges of being an Oakland Police Department officer. It is not the easiest city to be an officer in. And the purpose of this video, as I said, is not to bash the police. It is a challenging city. And then understanding the current challenges and what the city needs to address. So let's look at just the crime challenge. If you do a search about Oakland, California online, it does not take long to come up with something like this. Oakland almost always shows up as one of the most dangerous cities in the country. It usually ranks somewhere between 10th and 20th, depending on what methodology they use. And this scares a lot of people. But if you've watched my videos, there are a lot of parts of Oakland that are very nice, very safe, and like most cities, crime in Oakland is very much a neighborhood specific type of challenge. And we're going to talk about how that came to be and what needs to be addressed. So if you go to the Oakland Police Department website and you want to know about where crime is occurring in the city, you can go to this crime mapping function. This is where I found it, is from the Oakland Police Department website. And in this first slide, we're looking at where homicides have occurred in about the first 6 months of 2023 in the city. Now, for you to understand the size of Oakland and the different areas, so Oakland pretty much runs from the bottom of the map. In the south, it runs all the way over to the Bay. In the west, to the north, Emeryville, basically Ashby Avenue, is the northern part of Oakland, and then it runs to the east all the way out to Canyon and just kind of diagonally against that body of water to, once again, the south of the map. So if you look at this map, you can see most of the homicides in the city are concentrated in the southwest part of the city and just the western part of the city. And I'm going to talk about some of the patterns as to how that occurs. And the southern part of the city is generally known as East Oakland. This is usually when you see negative videos about Oakland. This is usually where they're filming them, is in the eastern part along International Boulevard or near there, or in the very western part near the Port of Oakland area. Most videos you see about Oakland are not of the eastern or northern part of Oakland because they don't get as many clicks. So now we're going to talk about violent crimes: arson, assault, burglary, robbery. You kind of still see the same pattern to the southwest and to the west, not so much to the east. few experiences here and there, but definitely not the pattern you see on the southern and western part of the city. Nonviolent crimes, so motor vehicle theft, vandalism, car break-ins, and there's a little bit more concentration this time in the northern part of the city, but it's still primarily on the west side, the southern part of Oakland. And the reason it's a little bit more concentrated in the northern part this time is downtown Oakland is in the northern part of the city. Also, a lot of the restaurants, nightlife are also located in this part of the city. So it just creates a better opportunity for thieves, essentially, because there's a concentration of people. That's the pattern of crime. This has been the pattern of crime in Oakland for decades. Very much concentrated on the west and southwest sides of the city. Southwest side of the city is called East Oakland. I have another video that explains why it's called East Oakland, but that's where the crime is located. It is not so much to the northern part or the eastern part of the city. So let's see how this applies to history. Now, this is a redlining map. It was created by essentially the federal government and the banks, and it determined where federally guaranteed mortgages would be available. This map is from the late 1930s, early 1940s, and you kind of have to twist it a little bit clockwise to kind of get the right orientation. But the red areas were areas where there would absolutely be no federally guaranteed mortgages offered. Yellow areas were questionable. Blue and green areas are really where the federal government offered guaranteed mortgages. Just through historic segregation, historic discrimination, the people of color, primarily African American people, were forced into the red areas. Also, these red areas tended to have all of the industry. The smokestacks and things historically were located in these areas. So you created an area that did not qualify for mortgages and was heavily industrialized. And when industry left cities, basically back in the 1970s, 80s, you basically just left empty lots and areas that did not have very much economic opportunity. So keep this map in mind, because we're going to look at another map and shows the importance of this. The other thing to consider in this, which we're going to talk about, is at the southern part, there's a line that goes through, kind of a white line going through the southern part. That pretty much matches up with what is now the 880 freeway. The 880 freeway is the major north-south freeway in Oakland. There are a ton of trucks, a ton of diesel pollution because of those trucks. And in the western part of the city is where the Port of Oakland is. So you've got a ton of diesel pollution from ships and trucks going to the port. On the eastern side of the city, and it's a little bit hard to see on this map, but basically through some of those green and blue areas, yellow areas in the south, there is another major freeway called the 580 freeway. Since the 1950s, trucks have been prohibited on this freeway. That freeway did not exist, nor did 880 when this map was made, but it gives you an idea as to where they would be located. But trucks are not really allowed on the east side of Oakland, and essentially the wealthier parts, and they have much lower cases of health challenges. So, I misspelled asthma here, but that's okay. On the left side is the redlining, basically. On the right side is the incidence of asthma emergency room calls or visits per capita, and it pretty much matches up with that redlining map. And once again, that has to do with the Port of Oakland being located in these areas and the major north-south freeway with tons of trucks spewing out diesel emissions being through this part of the city. So the redlining has had a huge effect on the city in many ways, and it never really was corrected. These part of the cities have just always remained far poorer than the other parts of the city. And then this was impacted by other policies and behaviors of the government, the Oakland City government in the past. So one of the things that the city officially, unofficially did was the police were used until basically the 1960s, 1970s to really keep people of color, African Americans primarily, in those red line districts. If you were African American and you were basically in other parts of the city, you were very likely to get stopped by the police. The Oakland police had a reputation of being very abusive, beating people, arresting people falsely. They had a lot of tension with the primarily African American community, but other people of color in Oakland. In 1966, the Black Panther Party was formed, and one of the main reasons it was formed was to police the police, to let the police know that they were being watched when they stopped people of color, and that the abuses that they were known for were not going to be tolerated anymore. And this is really the start of a lot of activism and really outward distrust of the police in many communities in Oakland. The Black Panthers, I'm not going to get into the history. They had a lot of community programs, but one of the major reasons they started was police abuse in Oakland. So very contentious history. This is a picture near the main courthouse in downtown Oakland. Picture of the Black Panthers in the background, police officer, and they definitely did not get along. If you look into history, there's a lot more about like police raids on the Black Panthers. Supposedly this picture is part of a shootout that happened between police and the Black Panthers. I can't confirm that this picture is true, but that's a lot of what is known or shown often about the history of Oakland. But the police historically were used to keep black people in those red areas. That's really one of the major takeaways. So let's move to the last 20 years or so. We're going to talk about some of the scandals that the police department have had, and probably the major one is what was called the Riders scandal. And this was a group of police officers who were reputed to regularly beat and assault people, plant evidence on them, and falsely arrest them, and so on. And there was a huge trial about this. There were about 8 or 10 policemen, I believe, that were part of this, but it was alleged that it was far more prevalent throughout the police department. The 8 cops, the ex-cops, were cleared of the trial or of the accusations, and that created a lot of tension in the city. What is key out of that trial, though, is that the abuses were seen as being so prevalent that the federal government, through a judge, basically, a judge mandated oversight of the Oakland Police Department, and that's been going on for 20 years, since I think about 2003. So the department has made a number of changes, but it has had its scandals along the way. This is actually one of the most significant scandals in the last 20 years. About, I'm going to guess, 8 to 10 Oakland police officers were involved in a sex scandal with a sex worker who was underage. It was not just Oakland Police Department members that participated in the scandal. There were Alameda County sheriffs, Contra Costa sheriffs, San Francisco police officers, I think a Livermore police officer, a Richmond police officer. There were a number of different departments represented in this scandal, but it was really the Oakland department that had the most people participating in this, and it really once again set the department back. And as you can see, it loses 3 chiefs in 9 days. This was a very tough period a few years ago. They still do have some periodic issues. So Instagram accounts have been found of OPD officers saying disparaging things about different groups of people, and it has, set back the oversight by the federal government. So let's talk about some of the challenges of being an OPD officer, because as I said, it isn't the easiest city. If you want to just go write parking tickets, you don't come to Oakland to be an officer. There are many other localities you can go to and have a much quieter service. So one of the most challenging days for the Oakland police officers was back in 2009. 4 officers were killed in one day trying to arrest someone who had an outstanding warrant, I believe. This is the highest number of California police officers killed in a day, I believe, ever. There's one other time 4 officers were killed in a day. So you do have to consider the risks when you are a police officer. It's not every day, doesn't happen every day, but it can be a tough city. Some of the other things the Oakland police and their officers are dealing with is that there's discussion of moving the police headquarters out of the downtown civic area and moving it out basically towards the airport. There's a lot of space out there, relatively speaking, but it is kind of away from everything. It's almost like they're being cast aside, and that's kind of a bad morale thing for the police. Other more pertinent challenges: police are understaffed here in Oakland. They're under 700 officers, I believe, and they've had trouble getting some classes, academy classes, approved. And then there's been talks about defunding the police, which Oakland has not done. I don't care what you hear on, in the media. They have changed and increased the budgets for some alternative community development, but they have not defunded the police. So that's kind of where we are right now. Here's where some of the challenges the police still have to deal with. So about 2 or 3 years ago, the residents of the city voted to have oversight of the police taken out of the control of the mayor and to an extent the city council, and create a citizens police commission that oversees the police department. And we are still, as I mentioned, in a situation where the federal oversight of the department has continued for 20 years, and it may continue into 2024 or beyond. And that is because all of the requirements that the government set out, the federal government set out to make Oakland's policing more fair and less abusive, have not 100% been accomplished. So, as we mentioned, we're also in a situation where Oakland is short of police officers. It is a difficult city, and when you are in a situation that the Oakland police have been in, it makes it more difficult to recruit. So the governor has, on multiple occasions and just recently, requested that the CHP, or ordered the CHP, to assist Oakland in policing. And some people are for that, some aren't, but at the end of the day, Oakland is a little bit short of officers, so the help is probably well deserved or needed. The other thing that Oakland really has to address is that it has had an incredibly high turnover of police chiefs and administrations in the last 20 years since that Riders incident occurred. So I think Oakland, let's see here, this is earlier this year, so yeah, 12 police chiefs in 20 years. So they're lasting less than 2 years apiece. As you saw in one of the earlier slides, you went through 3 chiefs in 9 days. So it is just demoralizing, I believe, to police officers and the whole department when you don't have any consistency and there's constant change and turmoil with the leadership of the department. You do still have a high number of complaints in the city relative to the state average and many other major locales in the state. So this is the complaint rate among similar departments. What I will say here is that the level of community concern and oversight of the police is very high in Oakland, and I believe that there's probably higher likelihood that any behavior is going to be reported in Oakland than in many other locales, but without question, Oakland does just have a higher rate. This is actually one of the major reasons that I'm making this video, because 3 years ago, the Alameda County Grand Jury put out a report saying that the 911 system in Oakland was broken, calls were not being answered, people were being put on hold forever, or the system just never connected people with a 911 operator. 3 years later, in July, I believe it was, of 2023, the grand jury put out another report and basically said the city has done nothing to fix its 911 system in 3 years. And you have news stories of people who have come across victims of homicide or dead bodies. People may have died on the streets for whatever reason. Call 911, can't get through to anyone. This is absolutely horrible, and this is something that the city council and the mayor are directly responsible for. And from 3 years ago to now, the mayor's position has changed. There's a different person in there, but it doesn't matter. This is a well-known problem, and it affects every citizen in Oakland, and they have done nothing to fix this. And they really have to address this if they're going to start to get the trust of everyone in the city back and stop, playing around and attacking the police and all the rest of that, and not fixing a fundamental technology that people depend on. So that's a summary of some of the challenges that the Oakland Police Department face, why those challenges exist, and the history behind those challenges. And as I said, the purpose here, I've repeated it, it isn't to bash the police, but it is to make clear that there are definite challenges that really the mayor and the city council have to address. If you don't even have a functioning 911 system, that's not on the community, that's not on the officers on the street, that's on the leadership. Fix it. So anyway, I have done another video on East Oakland specifically, and if you'd like to watch that video, it'll pop up over here somewhere. If you got any questions about anything that I covered in this video, please drop me a text, send me an email, or give me a call. If you like the video, thumbs up so YouTube knows to show it to other people, such as yourself. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know each and every time I drop a new video. I'll catch you in the next video.